Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
All this week on the Happy Families podcast, we are talking about the importance of education, but how education differs depending on your child. At the moment, around the nation, Year 12 students are sitting their final exams, or they're about to, or they've just finished. It's one of those times where there's a lot of stress and a lot of families. But even if your kids aren't in Year 12, these conversations matter because education matters to us all. My guest today is Cam Barber. Cam started as a public speaking coach who broadened his approach to leadership skills and marketing messages. His clients include Paramount Pictures and the Hawthorn Football Club. He wrote the best-selling book, What's Your Message? And this is why I wanted to talk to Cam, because Cam only attended one day of university but became recognised globally as an expert in his field. His current passion is something else that's very dear to my heart, that is parenting messages. And Cam argues that parenting skills are a bit like leadership skills. I've had the same thought and had the same conversation with plenty of CEOs. So today we're going to talk about the messages that we're delivering to our children that develop their initiative, their character and their thinking skills, especially when it comes to their education. Cam Barber, thank you for joining me on the Happy Families podcast. I'm thrilled to have you here.
It is a pleasure.
Cam, let's start with your background. I'm fascinated by what sort of a student you were as you were going through school. And we've got to talk about this first day of university dropout. But also, you've got a son, and I'd love to know how that's affected the way that you engage with your son around his education. I know that's three questions in one. Terrible interviewing skills, but my sense is that there's a good story here.
All right, let's go. I was a pretty good student until about 12 or 13 when homework became a big thing. I wasn't very self-disciplined. And it got worse and worse. So as high school progressed, I became a worse student. And I used to get stressed, very stressed about, I'd look at my homework, I'd open it up and put it on the kitchen table. And then I'd stress about, doing it and so on. So I actually was saved from high school by becoming an exchange student to Sweden. So halfway through Form 5, halfway through
grade
Form
10 or
5,
11, whatever you want to call it.
Grade 11, halfway through grade 11, I left and did a year in Sweden as an exchange student. And I'll tell you a further story about that in a moment when we talk about messages, because I got my own sponsorship money for that based on a message my dad gave me. But the deal was that after I got that sponsorship money from a Swedish company, I had to work for them for 6 months to pay it back. So I got some work experience, and then I went back and did what was called a Tertiary orientation program, which was an equivalency done at a university, but it was a Tafe course. I got accepted into my double degree marketing psychology course. I went in to defer it because my dad had asked me to join him, help him with his business. So I went into university for one day, I deferred, and then I never went back.
Listening to that story, I'm certain that so many parents will respond with nods of affirmation. And it certainly is my story as well. I was a really good student in primary school, hit high school, like you said, 12 or 13 years of age, and something happened. And the bottom just fell out. And from that point on, there was no salvaging my educational career, for want of a better word. It was just diabolical. And I finished grade 12 with a number 15 and a star next to it, meaning I scored on the bottom 15% of New South Wales and they wouldn't tell me what number it was. The star just says, you did badly. 15 is the lowest number we offer. So you've gone and done this university day, and then what happened? You went and helped Dad at work.
Yeah, so he had started a business a year before, and he was struggling. And over the summer period, I went and did some work for him to help him get organized. And not that I was organized, but, I was another person to help.
Pair of hands. Yeah.
Another pair of hands. Well, actually, I had one thing. He had all these notes in these little notebooks, exercise books. And he'd say, "Oh, we've got some pigments." He was in the coloring concrete business. And he said, "We've got some such and such." And then I go, "Well, what do you mean?" And he'd search around for an exercise book. And I said, "What about a file card system?" So anyway, he thought that was great and that I was really helping him get organized. And he said, in fact, and this is the power that he had over me, he touched me on the shoulder, very tall man, big, huge hands, still to this day. And he sort of looked up into the sky. There was nothing there, but we were looking up together and he said, "Join me in the business cam." And I went, "Yeah, great." My mum never forgave him though, because, I was supposed to go to university. But what ended up happening I left after 2 years with him, and I realized that I'd learned how to run a business. And in those areas, I'd learned how to sell. I'd learned how to read a balance sheet. I'd spoken to the accountants. I'd, done the taxes. I thought, I don't need to go back to school. I'm actually ready to go. And I started my own business from that point.
Wow. What does that do for you in terms of the way you look at education? You're raising a son who is at the pointy end of education, right? He's 18. My educational experience has had dramatic impact on the messages that I give my kids about the value of education and how education works.
So that's part of your 3-part question was, how is this related
I'm
to
so sorry, yeah.
bringing up my son? No, it's very valid because there are different ways to look at it. And I hoped, at one point, I hoped that I could sort of offload my parenting to the school. And particularly around high school age, and that did not work. The absolute opposite happened. So my son James is gifted and challenged. Now he's gifted in the sense that he has perfect pitch. He's played violin since he was 4. He taught himself to play piano because he went and saw the Queen movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and he watched YouTube videos and taught himself to play piano.
Wow!
Right. So he's gifted. And a lot of people go, "Oh, he must be good at maths," because no. Here's where he's challenged. And every teacher, he has frustrated every single teacher. He drives them nuts. So, for example, one of the teachers came to me when he was, 5 or 6 years old. And they all have this look on their face. They all say, "Mr. Barber, I need to talk to you about your son." And she said, "He can't draw a straight line." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, and she tried to explain it to me, and I got little James, a cute little kitty, look up at me, and I go, "Mate, what's wrong? Why can't you draw a straight line?" He goes, "I don't know, they confuse me." And I said, "But she gives you a ruler. She's given you a ruler so you can draw the straight line." And the poor little adorable kid said, "But if I move my hand, the ruler moves." I don't know. Can you understand? As a parent, this is how he worked. I'll tell you another one. When he was in kindergarten, he had a French teacher, French class, and she had the same thing. She was always saying, "James, I don't understand James. I think he's lying to me." And so the exercise for the day was, you call your dad, but what's his actual name? And all the other kids are going, "Oh, Joe, Ralph," and James said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, James, I don't believe you. I can't believe." And it was this butting heads all day long. And at the end of the day, she came to me. She said, "I must talk to you about James." And here's this gorgeous little kid looking up at these 2 adults talking about him. And she said, "I'm sure he knows your name. Why wouldn't he participate in class?" And I looked down at him and I said, "You know what my name is, don't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, but not in French."
I love this. Your stories would be resonating with so many parents who are absolutely tearing their hair out with the way their kids are doing at school. Like, school can be a really confusing place for them. Really, really confusing place.
Well, he, in primary school, for the last 2 years of primary school, he had the same teacher and they were in the same classroom all day long. So, and he is charming. He's a charming kid. He learned that he wasn't good at certain things, but he could make people laugh. And so he said, "I'll just make them laugh and they'll let me off they'll let me. And that's what happened. She thought he was so charming. She let him out of homework. Yeah. So anyway, he was kind of cruising thinking, I know, I've got life worked out. Then he goes to high school and they say, you're in all sorts of different rooms. You've got all sorts of different teachers. Here's a computer that you've never used before and 5 different apps that you have to use to navigate your classes. And what he did was he went, sure. And he never even opened it. And he just lied to everybody. And so I got called in again. I got called in 3 months after the start of high school. And all these teachers, 3 of them, had the same look on their face. And they said, there's just something about James. It seems like he doesn't even know where his classes are. We see him walking around looking in the windows, and he denied it all because he didn't want to be seen as dumb. And anyway, in question and answer in that session, one of the teachers said, did you get my email this morning? Because you haven't responded to my last email. And he said, yes. And then later in this discussion, someone said, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, I couldn't do that because my laptop has got a flat battery. And I went, hang on, if your laptop's got a flat battery, how did you get her email? And he looked around and he went, well, she said she sent it to me. I believe her. So he did not work well within the education system. He passed though. He worked out. He said, Dad, I know how I can scrape through. And that's what he did.
So he did better than me.
Well, I don't know that he did because he said, I don't have to do that test because I can pass by doing this, that, and the other. I'm not even sure I understand it. But he didn't go to university. That wasn't a good idea. But I don't know if we're staying on track, but where he is now. So we wanted him to be an exchange student. That kind of saved me. It got me out of school, let me mature at my own pace. There was no real pressure in Sweden because I didn't speak the language for the first 6 months. So I kind of had a let off, and then I'd aged a couple of years. I'd done some work, and then I went back and I was kind of okay. And we thought that would be good for James. But COVID, put the kibosh on that. The timing was wrong. And then he left, then he finished school. And so I wrote a letter, which is this message my dad gave me, to all my friends in America and Europe, and created an exchange program for him. And so he's now done some acting classes in LA. He's in Sweden. He's been volunteering on 2 different farms. He's learned all sorts of things. So he's getting an education outside of the education system.
This is fascinating. I'm sure that there are light bulbs going off in everybody's minds as you talk through this story. Let's talk about what you do now as a university dropout. Well, I mean, does deferring on day one even count as attending university? I don't know. Well,
I'd like to say that because I'm into memorable messages. Right.
I was going to say, what's your message?
I attended university for a day.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, that's memorable.
It is.
Anyway, so however you want to describe that.
Yeah. So what is your message? Because that's your book, right? You're about parenting messages. What's your message, especially when it comes to, or maybe a better question is, what's a vivid message? Because that's really what you're aiming for, right? Vivid messages. Like, I went to uni for a day. It's vivid. It's memorable. It captures the imagination.
Correct. So I'll continue with my story. So I left my dad's business. I started my own business, and then I joined radio. And I was 5 years in radio sales, then as a sales manager. And I attended a presentation skills course, a 2-day course. And I wasn't good. I was very nervous. I'm a confident person in meeting people, but that's easy because you just have to answer questions. Whereas if you stand up, everyone's staring at you. You're separate to them. They're sitting down. You're standing up. The spotlight's on you. And I would freeze and I would talk rubbish.
It's my happy place, Cam. It's my happy place.
So I did a presentation course, 2 days, and I came away from that training more nervous than before the training. And it took me a few months to work out what was going on. And what I learned was that at least in the past, this presentation skills training was taught in a dumb way. They said, you have to worry about your body language. You've got to change. Basically, you've got to change who you are to fit a mold that we say is optimum. And it didn't work for me. For example, you can see me, the audience can't. My hands are moving all the time. And they said, well, no, 6 gestures a minute is optimum. You're doing 60. And I'm so sorry. I didn't even know.
I can't believe people paying for this course. Like, who's counting? Honestly.
Yeah. Well, no, they videoed us and they got the whole audience, the other participants to count and tell us what we were doing wrong, how many ums and ahs and so on. So anyway, long story short, I did my own research. I got my own education by reading books, attending seminars, and testing things with my sales team. And I developed a presentation skills course that was focused on two things: message transfer, because you can speak, but did they actually get the message? Can they recall it? And natural style, because when you're relaxed, you think more clearly and that helps you communicate more effectively. And so my business is Vivid Presentation Skills. The company is called Vivid Learning. And I've been teaching these presentation skills or messaging skills and structuring skills for about 25 years.
I hear a story like this and I just think to myself, okay, here's this guy who got through high school okay-ish, didn't go to university, has had a global educational experience with Sweden in particular, but now mentoring CEOs, Hawthorn Football Club, movie companies, Fortune 500 companies in the United States. Mm-hmm. This idea, when it comes to what the education system is giving us, and it's how fit it is for purpose in 2023, really, and listening to what you're describing about your son James as he makes his way in the world, being an absolutely round peg in a square hole. This whole conversation, I guess, makes me want to press pause on the story. I think this is a compelling story, and simply ask you, if you're all about messages, vivid messages, what would be a customized message that parents who are listening to this conversation could share with their children, either A, as they're doing their high school exams right now, or B, as they're navigating the challenging place that education can be for so many families?
Every kid's different, so you've got to work out the messages. But what is a vivid message? So a vivid message is something that's alive. So if it's got a visual component to it, I'll give an example of James, right? So we watch movies together. James is actually very good at remembering movie lines too. You can give him a line, he'll tell you the next line. So I see that that's a talent for him. And has everyone seen Finding Nemo? I mean, it's just one of those great movies. So there's a scene in Finding Nemo with the turtle, the old turtle who talks like a surfer dude, right? And he's got 2 or 3 little kids. One of them's called Squirt, and they're floating around in this fast-moving channel of water. And if you go out of that channel of water, you get separated from the group. And so Nemo's dad is the main character, and he's a nervous parent who doesn't think the kids can be trusted on their own. So one of the little turtle kids, gets lost, and the dad turtle talks, "Hey, let's see what happens." And so Nemo's dad is panicking. "Oh, he's gone out." And Mr. Turtle says,
"Whoa, kill the motor, dude. Let us see what Squirt does flying solo."
And what happens in the movie is that the kid works out where he is and he gets back in. Now, what I said to James, and I've done this 3 or 4 times, one time I said, "Okay, James, we're on a tram. He's 5 years old, 6 years old. I said, we have to go on another tram. It's number 26. You have to find the tram for us." And his first reaction is, "I don't know what to do. Is my dad abandoning me? I'm scared." But what I did is I said, "You have to find it. Let's see how you go flying solo." So what I've done is I've made that message vivid by linking it to a movie that he knows. And look how much parenting is done for me effortlessly. That movie scene, number 1, it makes him smile. Dad's playing with me. This is not serious. Number 2, the movie scene shows that a child, when he's flying solo, ends up working out what to do and getting back, and it's a happy ending. So it gives him a little bit of courage from the movie. So he finds the number 26 tram. He gets praise from his dad, and it goes well. Sometime later we're at the movies, and I go, "James, you have to buy the ticket." He goes, "I don't know how to buy the movie ticket." I said, "Well, look, they're standing over there. Here's the money. You hold the money in your hand. You stand in the line, and when you get to that lady at the window, you say, 'I want 2 tickets to this movie.' You give her the money. Let's see how you go flying solo," right? And so the first time there's a reference that's successful. The second time, as a parent, I say it's an even stronger message because he's already had a successful result.
Vivid messages, valuable, customized parenting messages from a guy who mentors and leads CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and didn't do a day of uni. Well, We've discussed that.
I didn't stay the whole day.
Didn't he? Just went in to defer.
Correct.
Never actually attended the class. Cam Barber, just a delight to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Absolute pleasure.
Cam Barber started as a public speaking coach who broadened his approach to leadership schools and marketing messages. And he wrote the best-selling book, What's Your Message? You can find it online wherever you look for books. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. Tomorrow, we're speaking with somebody I can't wait to introduce you to. She didn't do so well at school and went on to become a professor of audiology, but along the way, produced sound for the artist formerly known as Prince. I can't wait to introduce you to Susan Rogers tomorrow on the podcast. I'll see you then.